The house at 1122 King Road was the off-campus home of 5 students attending the University of Idaho. But after November 13th of 2022, it became a bloody crime scene as 4 students would lose their lives to a homicidal maniac with a knife. Today we're going to talk about the Idaho murders, and we're going to do it in plain English in chronological order. We're going to meet our victims and discuss the outstanding police work that leads up to where the case stands as of the release of this video. We're also going to meet the suspect, Bryan Kohberger. Now, his court date is set later this year at October 2nd, so everything that we say here is alleged. But I must say, the things that they have on this man doesn't look very good for him. Now, my name is Monks, and consider hitting that like and subscribe button, because unlike Bryan Kohberger, that's still free. So to start the story, I'd like to introduce you to the 4 students that sadly lost their lives that night. And first, we're going to talk about Kaylee Jade Gonsalves, and she was born in Concord, California on June 8th of 2001. And after just 1 year of life, her family moved her to North Idaho. And reading about her, you kind of get the impression that she was a really tough cookie, and she kind of had to be because she played with older kids and had older siblings. And her family would recall fondly that she never ever thought that there was a good reason why she couldn't do what the big kids did. So she's always had a big personality. Now, entering school, she was also a great student, maintaining solid grades throughout. And not only did she blossom into a wonderful young lady, she had a great sense of humor that was capped off with a big, beautiful smile. And she was basically a joy in everyone's life that she came across. And it was in middle school that she met her match, another spark plug named Maddie. Madison Mae Mogan was born in Eugene, Oregon on May 25th of 2001, and she would spend the first 2 years of her life there before moving to North Idaho. She was smart as a whip, making the dean's list every single semester. She also loved making people laugh in what is described as an offbeat sense of humor. So when she came across Kaylee, their personalities played off each other perfectly, and they became inseparable. And from that point on, both families effectively had adopted another child, Kaylee and Maddie. They made sure they graduated from the same high school together, and you could only imagine how thrilled and excited these girls were when they were accepted to the University of Idaho, where they would attend together. But unfortunately, this is where the story tragically ends. And this was just months shy of graduating college together as they had planned. They were hanging out in Maddie's room, on Maddie's bed, in that 1122 King Road house, when someone with nothing but bad intentions enters their room. And the family would say something that was truly sad. They said that at least Maddie and Kaylee were always there for each other in life, and they found solace, a little bit of peace knowing that they were there for each other in death. Now, our third person is Xana Kernodle, and she was born in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho on July 5th of 2002. Now, from an early age, she was a gifted athlete, excelling as a gymnast. Now, going into middle and high school, she would play volleyball, track, and soccer. But what made people love her the most was her positive attitude and her desire to live life to the fullest. She had an infectious laugh, and that was accompanied by a contagious sense of humor, and it's no wonder that she made an impression on everyone that she met, especially a boy named Ethan Chapin. Ethan was born in October of 2002, and he was the first of 3 to enter the world. He was a triplet, and it was so beautiful to read when the family said that amongst themselves they were best friends, and that's always great. It's always great to hear. Ethan played soccer, basketball, and ran cross country. So when he met Xana in the spring of 2022, a girl that matched his energy and athleticism, it was something that was undeniable for both of them. Her loved ones would joke that Xana was serious about her studies at this time, and she didn't make any time for boys, and Ethan showed up and he kind of ruined her plans. That's cute. Soon after, for Ethan's birthday, Xana posted a picture to Instagram of both of them with the caption, "Life is so much better with you in it. Love you." On the night of November 13th, the two would be spending their evening together in Xana's room in the 1122 King Road house. Xana had just ordered some food from DoorDash and was watching TikTok on her phone, not knowing that just above her and Ethan, her roommates Kaylee and Maddie had just been attacked. And sadly, the couple would also meet the same fate. Now, Ethan was a guest in the house, which means that there are two more roommates to account for which we will be getting to shortly. But before we get into the night of the murder, the details, I think the layout of the house is extremely important because when this story first broke, I remember all we knew was that 4 Idaho students were murdered and they believed that it was a culprit with a knife. Now, without any context, what the house layout was, I simply imagined a knife-wielding madman going on a rampage. These were young adults and they wouldn't just sit around while someone stabbed them. So then I started to think, okay, there had to be at least 2 killers. Then you learn that there were 2 roommates that allegedly came out unscathed and they were in the house at that time, and things started to look fishy in that direction. Like, why wasn't there any screaming? And if there was, why weren't the other roommates alerted by it? And the order of how the students were actually killed, things started to make more sense. So let's go ahead and describe the house at 1122 King Road. There are 2 bedrooms on the first floor with a bathroom in the middle. The second floor also appears to have 2 bedrooms and another bathroom and a kitchen. Now, this kitchen would have sliding doors leading outside to elevated ground, sort of like a backyard. Now, on the third floor, there are 2 bedrooms and another bathroom. So Maddie and Kaylee, they occupied the top third floor with Kaylee's dog, Murphy. Now, the second floor was occupied by Xana and then one of the surviving roommates, and we're only going to call her DM as indicated by the affidavit. There was also one other roommate that stayed on the lowest first floor, I believe, but she probably wasn't home at the time. Now, these 2 girls' identities are unnecessary currently, so we will respect their privacy. So now you get the idea that this is a large house and that the killer moved freely as all the occupants were preoccupied in their respective rooms. So now let's talk about the night of the murder and what detectives believed went down. So the killer either came through the front door or the sliding back doors of the second-story kitchen. It's believed he came through the sliding doors, though, because that's actually how he would exit later on in the story. So first, he would make his way up to the third floor where Kaylee was hanging out with Maddie in her room. We know this because the police affidavit confirmed that Kaylee and Maddie were killed first. Now, make of this part as you will, but the autopsy would later find that Kaylee's injuries, and I quote, significantly more brutal than those sustained by Maddie, Xana, or Ethan. So after the murders, the killer goes back downstairs to the second floor where the kitchen sliding doors are. He's about to leave. Now, Ethan is the next to be killed, and this will be one likely scenario, okay? So now remember that Ethan is very athletic, so he will not go down easy. So it's not far-fetched to imagine that the killer saw Ethan just as he was leaving Xana's room, managed to catch him off guard, from behind possibly, and slit his throat. Now, Ethan's body would be found in the hallway next to Xana's doorway. Xana is still in her room, maybe unaware while on her phone, and would find herself in the fight of her life. Autopsy shows that she sustained numerous defensive wounds. She fought extremely hard against the attacker. So the suspicion that the killer specifically had a target in mind that night seems a bit valid, one as we will learn more about later. For now, it appears that Ethan, he just happened to be outside Xana's room at the exact wrong time, because if the killer was there to kill everyone in that house, he would have just killed the first people that were on the floor that he broke into first, which was the second floor kitchen, and that would be Xana and the surviving roommate DM. And Xana and Ethan, didn't need to be quiet, as a mouse. I mean, for what? And the house, it did have a reputation for being a party house, so noise was probably not a concern. So they were probably just freely listening to TikTok, music, whatever, talking loudly. Simply meaning the killer probably knew that they were there, but as long as they stayed in their room, they were fine. Plus, the killer didn't go around checking all the doors for more victims after, because if he did, he surely would have found the surviving roommate, DM, in her room. Now this next part, which will be DM's account of what she experienced that night, is bone-chilling. She recalled waking up 3 times that night before 4 a.m. with just random sounds. One believed to be sounds of people talking, which could be chatter from any of the victims or maybe the TikTok Xana was watching. At 4 a.m., she thought she heard someone playing with Kaylee's dog. She of course assumed it was Kaylee, but given that it was about the time police assumed that the killer entered the house, was it the killer making friends with the dog? Now DM also said that she thought she heard Kaylee say, "There's someone here," and then a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." But it was when she thought she heard someone crying did she crack the door open just a little bit to look outside. And let's just say thank goodness that she didn't just step entirely outside, because a man clad in all black with a mask covering his mouth and nose briskly walked right past her. She described herself as being in a frozen state when this happened, and I'm sure she's counting her blessings now, because if he did notice her, the death toll might have been 5 that night. She watched as the man exited those sliding doors and into the night, and DM would close her door again and lock it and went to bed. And here you must understand that DM did not know what just happened. Besides seeing a strange man in a mask leaving the house, he spooked her, yes, to the point of freezing, but this is after the pandemic. It's not that unusual to see a man wearing a mask, and it could have been one of the roommate's friends going home. So what did DM do? She went back to bed, and she just didn't know that there was a complete massacre all around her. And it wasn't until 11 a.m. the following morning that the police were called. DM, of course, would speak to the police and describe the man that she saw. It was a man clad in black, about 5'10" or taller, with bushy eyebrows, thin but an athletic build. Now, detectives would find themselves working an extremely bloody crime scene. The students were murdered with what they believed as a serrated knife, okay, with edges on it, sort of like a K-bar that I'm going to show you here. And what detectives would discover next would be almost as close to a smoking gun as one can get. So in Maddie's room, they found a sheath for a knife. It had the United States Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, Anchor insignia stamped on it, and it was a K-bar knife. Almost definitely, this was dropped by the killer as the girls fought for their lives. Now, that knife sheath was processed at an Idaho state lab, which would locate one single source of male DNA on the button snap. Now, they just had to find who that blood belonged to. And now it was a waiting game. And after a long month of waiting, all the loved ones, all the friends were starting to fear that this case was growing extremely cold. And then the police had something new, and they needed the public to help them out. They stated on the night of the murders, a white 2011 to 2013 Elantra was seen speeding off of King Road at 4:20 a.m. The Moscow Police Department believes that the occupants of the vehicle might have crucial information regarding the case. This was a social media net of sorts, and this was cast on every white Elantra owner around that area, and it's remarkable. Being a person that's lived in a time where there was no internet, and how large a net the internet can cast, because 6 weeks after the murder and hundreds of miles away at Washington State University, a criminology student who was now a teaching assistant named Bryan Kohberger got entangled in that net. Now, I'm going to give you all the information they had before arresting this man, and you could form your own educated assumptions from them. First, he owned a white Elantra, the same make and model observed by police on Kings Road on surveillance cameras that night at 4 a.m. The next part will give you a nice look at the surveilled world that we live in today, because detectives were able to backtrack that white Elantra from 6 weeks ago at 4:20 a.m. through numerous public cameras all the way back to 2:44 a.m. And guess where it was exiting from? His Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, and watched it travel down Nevada Street in the direction of Moscow, Idaho. And at 3:30 a.m., surveillance would capture that car heading down Kings Road towards the Idaho student's house. Numerous cameras would show that white Elantra passing the house 3 times until finally it parked in the vicinity of that house. That same vehicle would then be recorded speeding away at a high rate at 4:20 a.m. The car is then tracked heading back to Pullman, Washington. And as with all high-profile cases, the FBI would lend a hand and they would surveil Kohberger everywhere he went. When they ran the plates for the car, they found something rather odd. So once upon a time, that white Elantra was registered to a Bryan Kohberger in Pennsylvania, where his parents live, so probably where he's from. But just 5 days after the murders, he decides to register that same car in Washington. Now, what was the purpose of that? The timing is a bit peculiar, but everything at this point is still circumstantial. The authorities are now also staking out Bryan Kohberger's parents' house around the clock. This is when they would notice some peculiar behavior by Bryan. In the middle of the night, Bryan started deep cleaning his white Elantra wearing latex gloves. Strange in itself, but still circumstantial. But the next part is not so circumstantial. So I hope that we're all students of the game, okay? We're detectives here. We should know that the moment that you throw trash away, not only is it fair game for raccoons, it is also fair game for the U.S. government. Bryan Kohberger proceeds to throw away trash that night, and when he finally went inside, the FBI swooped in and confiscated that trash. After they analyzed whatever seemed pertinent in that garbage, there was a match. Now, this part you have to pay a little bit close attention to, the way I'm gonna say this. Being that it was mainly his parents' trash, the DNA that came back belonged to his father. Now, it's a match because the father's DNA is 99.9% the father of the blood found on the knife sheath at the crime scene. Now, hopefully my English there wasn't too clumsy the way I wrote it. Okay, so now they had enough probable cause to arrest Bryan Kohberger. Now, his cell phone activity, it would be pretty damning as well, according to them, because the phone pinged in the vicinity of King Road about 12 times prior to the murders. And Moscow, Idaho is a very small town. Okay, if you look on it on a map, it is very tiny, and I can't imagine it having at most 2 towers. I'm thinking it only has 1 tower. So Bryan Kohberger could be in the vicinity anywhere, and it would probably ping off that 1 tower. They don't have the technology yet, I don't think, to, pinpoint your exact location. They do believe that it's very common for killers to surveil their targets beforehand, and these pings are really early in the morning or real late at night. And on the night of the 13th, in the time frame of the murders, Kohberger's phone was conveniently turned off. They could prove that, and then turned back on as it pinged its way back to Washington. Now, an interesting ping, though, again, was in the vicinity of the crime scene again at 9:12 a.m. Now, what was he doing at the house again? Okay, detectives believe that he realized that he left that damn knife sheath at the crime scene and he was going to try to get it back, but now it was daytime. Everybody was walking about, going to school. And he just decided that he wouldn't risk it. So after this possible failed attempt at getting the sheath, or maybe he was just going back to the crime scene, as psychopaths do, he would go ahead and get some coffee on the way home, and he would actually do a little shopping at Albertsons, which of course surveillance would capture him doing. So he definitely was in the car that morning if you correlate the pings and the surveillance of him doing these things. And his trip back to Washington. So he can't really claim that, someone took his phone and his car, at least for that mysterious morning drive. But of course, any case comes down to motive. What was Bryan Kohberger's motive? Which I can tell you now, a very creepy thing they found. Turns out that Bryan Kohberger had slid into the DMs of one of the 4 victims. I would speculate it's Kaylee, because hers, of course, was by far the most brutal of the deaths. But we will just say that one of the girls' DMs had a message from Bryan Kohberger that simply read, "How are you?" The message was ignored and never responded to. Now, more cordial attempts would be tried by Bryan to get the girls' attention, but they were also left unread. Now, Bryan Kohberger's Instagram account followed not only Kaylee, but also Maddie and Xana, every girl that was murdered that night. Now, do as you will with that information. You armchair sleuths, maybe you could solve this crime. Maybe Bryan's innocent. You never know, right? Now, don't forget that Bryan Kohberger has entered the plea of not guilty, and everything is alleged, as I need to reiterate, until a verdict is reached. Now, he's facing 4 counts of murder in the first degree, 1 count of felony burglary for allegedly entering with the intent to commit murder. He is being held without bail. Right now, the trial date set for October 2nd, later this year, 2023, and the county prosecutors, they can seek the death penalty within a 60-day window after Kohberger's plea, which he already pleaded, so the clock starts ticking at this point, according to Idaho law. Now, the crime, definitely, if he did it, he needs to be gone from this planet. But of course, we still have to wait for the trial to go down. And to most of us, it seems so obvious after hearing the evidence and his concerning behavior. And have you seen those eyes? Okay, so the outcome appears obvious, but then I'm reminded, wasn't the OJ trial pretty obvious too? Anyways, my name is Monks, and like and subscribe. That's the free, easy way. Or join through the hard way, $5 a month through Patreon. But hey, you will get exclusive content and keep the show going if you care. Anyways, go protect the ones you love, and love the ones that protect you.